On today's episode of Still Processing, a 76ers podcast, I'm joined by Justin Crosby as we discuss the upcoming Sixers season, the return of one James Harden, and a little update on the talks with the Los Angeles Clippers. We'll find out if there are any bits of life left there. All that and more on today's episode of Still Processing, a 76ers podcast. Welcome back to another episode of Still Processing, a 76ers podcast. Hello, welcome all those who are mourning the loss of the Philadelphia Phillies. Welcome to Sixers season, which is not going to be much better. But today, I am joined by our very own Justin Crosby. Justin, how are you managing through the pain?
Yeah, I've been hurt so much before, so I'm a little numb. Disappointed. It's like one of them things where, I have a child now, but it's like you're not upset, you're just disappointed. Like that's how I feel right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Game 7 loss, not unfamiliar in Philadelphia. It's been some time, in fact, since they won a Game 7. Fun fact, it was the Phillies' first Game 7 in the long history of the Philadelphia Phillies. So, of course, what result but losing can be expected from Game 7? Game 6 and 7, both at home. I mean, that's Philadelphia, man. That's that. No team better embodies Philadelphia than perhaps these Philadelphia Phillies. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and again, we're about to talk about the Sixers, but I want to say
Sure.
that it got to the point where I feel like they depended on the crowd to scare the Diamondbacks, and we can't scare them when they score runs first in Game 6 or 7. But that's all I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, you can't scare them when all the stars in the Phillies lineup are waving after pitch after pitch after pitch either. I mean, it's not can't pump up your crowd with a strikeout when you're the team striking out. You know, it's a little bit problematic. But again, we are here to talk Sixers. Thankfully, I guess it's not a much brighter situation.
They're 0-0 right now. The bright side.
They do not have a sub 500 record. That is true. As of this moment in the season, they have not lost in the second round of the playoffs, which is a plus. That is different than the Sixers for the past 22 years, where that's been their peak. So this is good. This is good. Everything's bright. Everything's good. Everything's happy. We'll touch on the return of one Sixer that folks may or may not have heard. He's back. We'll dive a little more into that in just a little bit. We might as well start with it because it kind of feeds into our preview for the upcoming Sixers Bucks game. By the time this airs, it will be the same day. We're recording this Wednesday night. Game is Thursday night. So ahead of the first game of the season on the road in Milwaukee against the Bucks, the big news obviously affecting Philadelphia, the return of James Harden after 10 days missing from practice, from the team. James Harden has returned. He's back in the fold of Philadelphia. The interesting key points here, Harden's back just in time for the road trip. Harden was told he's not coming on the road trip because he's not ready to play in a game because he hasn't practiced in over 10 days. On top of that, Harden was still ready to go. Harden was again told not to come. And that, according to Nick Nurse and the Philadelphia 76ers, is a medical decision, which, listen, there's a whole lot of different ways that you could slice this. You know, do they not want him with the team because of the distraction? Do they not want him with the team because he's not physically ready to play, because he hasn't played in quite a while? And even though he keeps saying that he's in this great shape, there's nothing. Great shape is different from basketball shape. That's just the flat honest truth of it. So it's probably some kind of mixture of the two. But Justin, what's kind of your surface read of the situation?
My initial thoughts were that they didn't want him near the team, um, because just like the distraction and like him possibly going out there and not like you said, I guess a mixture, like not playing well because he hasn't played basketball in a while, hasn't practiced with the team, doesn't really know the offense, stuff like that. And it's like, then it's going to become a conversation. Well, is he throwing games? Like, it just becomes a whole thing. So I think that's the thought process. And then I thought possibly a trade could be imminent, but then I guess we'll talk later. Like, maybe not. But, it's just one of those things where I think it's a mixture of both. Keep him away from the team, the people who are practicing, who were there for the preseason, like, let those guys figure it out because probably more likely sometime in the future they'll be playing without.
Yeah, I think a lot of people like you were reading the tea leaves. I mean, really, everyone was trying to. It's what we're always trying to do. A lot of people noticed that Terrence Mann is not playing tonight. That was one for a lot of people, a glimmer of hope that maybe there was going to be a resolution to a James Harden trade. That does not appear to be the case. Like you said, we'll talk about that a little more later on. Harden's return makes sense when you think about well, what he has to do effectively to avoid fines, to avoid any trouble becoming a free agent this offseason. It was the eventuality that was always going to play out. Uh, we've just reached that point in time. So for Harden to be back with the team, not really with the team. He's in Philadelphia. He's still ramping up. That's been the key word: ramping up, ramping up, ramping up. Chris Haynes, of Bleacher Report, used that word ad nauseum. Not that there's a better word. Trying to find a synonym for that was rough. But that's where we're at. Basically, he's not going to be a part of the road trip at all. That means no Milwaukee. That means no Toronto. That means that potentially his first game will be the first one that we're covering live in person this season against the Portland Trailblazers this Sunday. So that is a nice little gift right there. So we'll see if Harden does play. How much does he play? I mean, you said it. It's not only the fact that we're coming through the entire offseason, but on top of that, you have a new head coach, you have a new offensive scheme, you have new teammates. Granted, a lot of the top guys are still the same, from Joel Embiid to Tyrese Maxey, even DeAnthony Melton, Tobias Harris. Even still, you're talking about working with guys like Kelly Oubre, that's new. Paul Reed's in a more expanded role, that's going to be new. How much we'll see of Mo Bamba, Danny Green's back, all this stuff. There's a lot of new moving pieces for Philadelphia. It's gonna be interesting to see how when Harden eventually folds into the rotation. And let me change that one more time, from how to when to if Harden does fold into the rotation. It's going to be interesting to see what that looks like. And there's not any real certainty on what the next move is going to be. Obviously, Harden was away for a personal matter. I prefer not to speculate on what that was. There have been some who speculated, source info, whatever you want to call it. To me, if it's a personal matter, whatever it is, the Sixers backed it. Listen, just roll with the motions for now, and we're going to figure this all out later. Obviously, if there was any situation, we do wish that both Harden and his family are healthy, wealthy, and wise. But at the end of the day, it effectively doesn't matter. We wish well for his family, but it doesn't matter what the personal reason was. That's his business. He's back with the team now. Let's see what it looks like as he joins the team full force. Now, do you think Harden's return has any long-term implications on him potentially actually returning to the team that is playing in-game action?
I mean, I think it has to, right? Because at some point, like he has really no excuse, right? Like the whole Ben Simmons thing was mental health, and again, I'm not making fun of mental health, but mental health, back issues, like whatever
Sure.
was going on. Okay, that you can say something's going on. If Harden's supposed to be in good shape, Everything's okay at home now. Hopefully, like we said, him coming back to do what, right? Like raise hell. Like, how do you get your like? How do you? I mean, okay, you could try to force your way out, but like that's not really helping you because the Clippers are the only team that the Sixers aren't going to up their deals. If you play bad or come back and cause hell, nobody else who may be interested is going to be interested. You never know. In the first 3 weeks of the season, 4 weeks of the season, somebody could get hurt. And they may be like, okay, we need James Harden for a year rental, like, and that could up the offers or the ante for other teams. So he needs to just, if he's going to truly be back, he needs to truly be back and play, in my opinion, in order for us to work out on the way he wants it to. He can't be mad at anybody else if it doesn't work out because at the end of the day, the Sixers are going to do what's best for them, regardless of what backdoor deal or conversations with Morey happened in the past. At this point in time,
Yeah,
they're going to do what's best for them. So, what's best for him is to play.
yeah. I mean, that's kind of the catch-22 of it all. There is, of course, the outside chance of potential injury that could stave him off the idea of playing. Because if you play and you get injured, well, what team's going to trade for you? You're not going to leave Philadelphia. What are your prospects going to look like next season trying to get a contract? That being said, the best strategy is probably for him to play kind of as he has the past couple years, which is play at the effort level he's feeling in the moment. They're not that Harden hasn't seen high highs with the Sixers, so the peaks have been incredible, but there kind of has been a as he feels led feeling to his play, particularly in the playoffs. We saw that, but it was sprinkled all throughout the regular season as well. So if he is to play, whatever percentage he wants to give, that's obviously up to him. If he does so with, they talk about calling it making business decisions. You use often a lot in like the NFL for a guy who's uh, expiring free agent, looking for that next contract. Maybe he doesn't, uh, go with complete effort. Either trying to break a tackle or tackle a guy, whatever the case is. Maybe it's just Harden making a business decision where he plays not even half-heartedly, but whatever percent he wants to, that he can show off his style because he doesn't need. That's the thing about James Harden. He doesn't need to play with 100% effort. We've seen him not play with 100% effort for over a decade. There's been flashes of this, depending because it's a long regular season. He the fact is that we see this with a lot of different players. I don't want to single out Harden as if this is a Harden quality. We've talked about Joel Embiid in a similar framing as well. This happens. This is almost parallel to the load management culture. So
But
if that is the best thing in interest for Harden, maybe that's the path he'll take. But we're going to have to see if that's what he decides.
and I'll say this, and I'll leave it alone. But my thought is like you come back, and of course, business decision from the Sixers side and Harden side, right? No, if he gets hurt, hopefully not. Whatever, if he does play, no trade, whatever the case may be. But then it's like if he does go out there and play, and he plays half-heartedly or not giving 100%, he's done this at multiple stops when he wants to go somewhere. In my eyes, I look at it and say like he needs to do right in this situation because the window is closing for him. He's still a really good player. Is he a number one? No, in my opinion. Now, this is just me talking, but he's a really good number two. If he Like, what other options are he going to have after this? Like, literally, if you look at the teams who have cap space next year, it doesn't really fit James Harden. Like, he could end up how, and we all know it. Melo was pushed out the league for a couple of years because of his attitude, and he didn't want to come off the bench and everything like that. Like, this same thing could literally happen to Harden in a different scenario, and he has to be careful because there are people watching it, and there are other players outside of the game or retired from the game or removed from the game who have said that like similar things. So he just has to be careful what he does because he's not 22. He's 34, 33, whatever the case may be. So like, yeah, I just think that like he has to be careful the way he plays this because he can end up being like Russ has adopted to it and said, all right, I want to win. I'm gonna be on a team I want to be on. I'll take the minimum, whatever the case may be. But it's not a lot of guys. Harden doesn't seem like that guy. So if he doesn't want to end up on the San Antonio Spurs next year playing with Wemby, then on the vet minimum, then I don't know. That's just my thoughts about it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what that move potentially would be during the offseason. If he's unable to secure that trade this year, which I think at some point he will, it's more so a matter of when, not if. I don't expect the Sixers to keep him past the trade deadline. But with Daryl Morey, you honestly never know. I mean, when you talk about uh, two battles of stubbornness, you're talking about two number one seeds with James Harden and Daryl Morey. So it will be interesting to see what happens. The Clippers, they just have that folding aura around them, So I do think eventually the deal's going to get done with some concessions made on the Clippers side. Do I think the Clippers are going to lose the deal? No, because they're going to get by far the best player involved in the deal, someone who can actually elevate them to potentially contender status, which they're not at right now. Kawhi, Paul George, it's great. It hasn't worked. It has not worked. Paul George even recently talked about how his legacy in LA right now is injury based. And that's the truth. And it's not dissimilar for Kawhi either. Not that James Harden's going to fix that. You're bringing in another aging player who's dealt with injuries over the past few years, but you at least have a puncher's chance at defeating some of the top tier Western Conference teams like Phoenix, teams like Denver, who we just saw destroy the Lakers, especially Jokic in that battle was unsurprisingly fantastic, which is terrifying for the rest of the league that he is coming right out the gate like that. So if you're the Clippers, you are going to want to make this deal. If you're the Sixers, you are absolutely hoping that at least another team enters the fray. And the tough part is, if you look at some of these other potential teams, I mean, Miami's been mentioned a lot, but that's a complete cultural shift for Miami. James Harden, like Jimmy Butler, might actually kill James Harden before the season's done. There's just not a clean fit there at all. When you talk about other alternatives, there's oddball teams like the Minnesota Timberwolves, where like on sense it makes sense to get a player like that, but James Harden going to Minnesota, like that's a team he would sit out for. I don't see him actually playing for Minnesota. Possibly the Knicks, but even still, the fit with Brunson doesn't make sense. There's not another great landing spot for James Harden, and it's gonna make this difficult on everybody involved, because the thing is, it's not getting any easier for anyone. It's not getting any easier for Harden, for the Sixers, for the Clippers. Sure as hell isn't getting easier for the Sixers fans. So this seems kind of like a lose-lose situation all the way around. It just becomes kind of a pissing match of who's more desperate first. And if you're a Sixers fan, you just got to hope that's LA. So we'll see what happens as far as this goes. But Harden's return is strictly temporary by all appearances. So we'll see what that looks like. We'll see if he plays come Sunday. I'm kind of hoping that he fields questions on Sunday. I'd love to be in that room and ask him a couple of my own. So we'll see what opportunity there is, but I'm sure there'll be plenty of people in there with me trying to get those questions fired through. But until then, there's a season starting. The Sixers have games to play. Life goes on for Philadelphia. And that's kind of been the message that Nick Nurse has been preaching this entire time. So let's take a look and let's focus on, maybe the first game of the season against Milwaukee tomorrow night. So obviously a win is the desired outcome for anyone backing Philadelphia. Other than a win, what are you looking to see in their season opener?
I'm looking to see how the offense flows. Joel played the last preseason game. He wasn't, from a shooting perspective, like from the field, he didn't play well. He did get the Joel amount of free throws, but I just want to see how the offense flows. Quite honestly, this is just me being like just observant. Like, yeah, they need wins, right? But the first 5 to 10 games, I'm just looking for them to try to figure out how they're going to play offense and defense in this new style without Harden, with Harden, whatever the case may be. because if this is supposed to be a more ball movement oriented situation from guys who really like the ISO. I mean, Joel ISOs a lot, and Harden clearly does, and they're a two-man game. I know there's going to be pick and roll, but just like I just want to see how that goes. That's what I'm really looking forward to, and I'm looking to see how they like muddy the waters. Like the Sixers really never did anything on defense to muddy the waters. Like everything was a let's just stick with this. Like I mean, the zone here and there, but like when they trap, when they press, how they're going to play Dame. Are they trapping? Like Nurse is not afraid to try different things. So I'm just interested in looking at that. Of course, a win would be nice, specifically on national television, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, again, it wouldn't be nice. I think seeing how the offense and the defense progress, just like you said, like that's going to be key. For me, I kind of want to look at a few of these players who are going to be stepping up, right? So that's Maxia as a facilitator, seeing what specifically that looks like. I want to see what of this preseason D'Anthony Melton can carry over because when you talk about guys who were impressive this preseason, he stands right at the top of that list. In 3 games, averaging over 18 points per game, obviously higher than his typical average. Most of that came against the Atlanta Hawks in the final preseason game. So you have to take that with a grain of salt. But then he goes against the Brooklyn Nets and he has a near triple double. I mean, you're talking about what's the nickname, Mister Do It All? Uh, I mean, you're talking about a guy who
Mr.
really
Do everything.
Mister
Or
Do Something.
Yeah, Mr. Do something. Yes, yes.
We'll get it down. We'll get it down one of these days, Mister Do. And he does a whole hell of a lot of something. I'll tell you
He
that right
does.
now.
He
And
does.
the one something to me that really stood out, kind of above anything else, he averaged over 8 3-point attempts per game over those 3 preseason games. Now, again, small sample size, preseason action. I absolutely hear you. But the dude shooting over over 8 3-point attempts in under 26 minutes a game, I want to see that carry over. That's the big thing for me because you're going to need that shooting. The Sixers were the top team in 3-point percentage last year. They were middle of the pack when you look at 3-point attempts. It was a strong, or rather a strength in the team that they did not take advantage of enough. And a large part of that is because of the ISO dominant style of play. Now that we're going to be moving away from that a little bit, there's still going to be a lot of ISO for Embiid, obviously, but we're moving away from that a little bit. I'd like to see a lot more threes flying. And if this team, granted, they lost George Yang and didn't entirely replace him. I think Danny Green hopefully will be the closest thing to that replacement, where if he can get halfway decent volume on his shot, obviously, but capable shooter, that's mostly what he's going to be doing is shooting threes. Uh, Maybe you can get some kind of replication of that production to keep the percentage, the average high enough. But you got to make sure that you're launching more attempts also. I mean, that's the name of the game, obviously, in the modern NBA is how good's your 3-point shot. And if the Sixers aren't going to be taking them, they're going to be fighting uphill for a lot of games going forward during the regular season and also during the postseason. So, what does D'Anthony Melton look like in that role? Obviously, that's huge. What does the rotation look like? Nick Nurse spoke on that a little bit, saying how D'Anthony Melton would be starting in place of James Harden. Off the bench, you're looking at guys. I mean, Pat Beverly, obviously, Paul Reed, obviously, and it sounds like Danny Green and also Kelly Oubre Jr. are going to get a lot of the run there from that point, I should say. Probably going with 9 guys early on. How does Jaden Springer factor into this? What is Mo Bamba's role basically? Because Paul Reed is playing backup center, uh, and he's also going to be playing power forward minutes. This isn't because Paul Reed is playing power forward that you're going to have all these backup center minutes open. This is an additional task for Reed. So what exactly this all looks like, and again the development of Paul Reed as well. So I think there's a lot to look forward to. But what do you think about? Obviously, this is the first matchup against the Milwaukee Bucks with Damian Lillard. What do you think the game plan to kind of slow him down will be? Who do you expect to be the guy on him? And do they really even have a shot at winning this game, at upsetting Milwaukee?
I mean, it's the first game of the season. I do think they have a chance. My honest opinion is although they've gotten Damian Lillard, they have gotten worse from a perimeter defensive standpoint.
Oh, for sure.
Now that they don't have Drew Holiday, I mean, they got Malik Beasley out there with Dame Lillard as a possible starting backcourt. When I tell you yuck on
Yeah.
defense,
Yeah.
so I think they're going to make him work on defense to kind of like tire him out or take him a little bit out of his game. I think that's going to be one aspect. I think they're going to make Dame guard. Um, Dame, they like sometimes to try to hide Dame on people. So I think they'll try to attack him. And, everybody going to try to do the PJ Tucker thing, but, you could just switch on that. But then I think that guarding Dame, I think they'll probably have Melton guard Dame. Even though Maxey did a pretty good job last time they played, but they'll probably have Melton guarding them full court, 94 feet. And I think when Melton comes out of the game and Beverly's in the game, be up in him, get on his nerves, smack him in
That's
the
going to
back of
be
the
fun.
head. Yeah,
That's
like
going to
that's
be a
what I'm
fun
looking
matchup.
for. And Giannis, I think they'll have PJ guard Giannis or Joel guarding Giannis with PJ guarding or Tobias guarding Lopez. And I think that's how they're gonna roll. And I do think they have a chance to win. It's the first game of the season. Both teams have kinks that they need to work out. I do think that whoever wins is going to get blown out. but
Interesting. Okay.
and by blown out I mean like 15-point loss. That's a blowout. But yeah, I didn't want it to be like 30 points because everybody would overreact if it was 30 points. But
For sure.
yeah, like a 12
Yeah,
point loss.
a double digit
Yeah.
victory. Yeah, no, I hear you.
But yeah, so that's what I'm looking at and looking forward to seeing. And I'm going to literally tweet you and text you when Patrick Beverly gets in the game and he picks up Dame from as soon as he gets the ball. And when he does something stupid or funny and Dame looks at the ref like, yo, come on, bro, he's wrong. I can't wait for that moment because I've been waiting for this for 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting excited about the Sixers again. I don't know if this is insanity, whatever it is, but as much as the drama can be sickening, there's still a lot to watch. Like it's almost process year esque, where you're looking at a lot of these guys who typically would have a smaller role. They're being thrust into a more prominent role. I mean, obviously, Joel Embiid, what he does this year is going to be exciting, or should hopefully be exciting. The same for Tyrese Maxey. Hopefully, he can take another step forward. But watching guys like Pat Bev just get under a guy who's been meant to be a Sixer for so long, just get under the skin of players like Damian Lillard, or watching Kelly Oubre, the magical roller coaster that is Kelly Oubre being on your team. I mean, the lows are going to be real low, I'll tell you right now. But anytime that he's playing within his role, you're talking about a guy who's going to look pretty darn good alongside this Sixers team. So uh, it's going to be a fun game, and whether or not they can pull it out, I think that remains to be seen. A lot of that's going to be on Joel Embiid because he did not look ready to go based off his one preseason game that we saw. So maybe it's up to Maxey. We'll see. Anything's possible, obviously. But game one is going to be a lot more about what you can take away from it than what the standings are updated as after the fact. So should be fun. Should be a good time. PSN actually, Philly Sports Network will have a live Sixers show beforehand. So be sure to look for the invite to that. Obviously, welcome to all. It's going to be a good time. Just casually talking Sixers, talking to a lot of you guys out there. Really just getting the pulse on what people are looking forward to, expecting, or not looking forward to as the season begins. So we got to move on because we have to talk about this. Unfortunately, we have to continue to talk about this, and we're going to bookend this pod talking back about James Harden because shortly before we came on, Adrian Wojnarowski, of course, did mention that the Los Angeles Clippers are taking a step back from James Harden trade talks, which in the most sickening will they won't they since possibly Ross and Rachel. These trade talks, who knows how who knows how on they ever really were, because these two sides have been so far apart the entire time. Terrence Mann is he got the Clippers saying Terrence Mann is untouchable, which is one of the most ludicrous freaking things that I've ever heard. And there's no disrespect to Terrence Mann. He is a very solid player, and I would love to have Terrence Mann on whatever team that I'm rooting for. But to say he's untouchable for last season's assist leader, for one of the top players of all time who's still producing at a 20-10 level, is ludicrous. And then you have Daryl Morey on the other side, who's demanding either an all-star or a package that they can repackage for an all-star, which is equally as ludicrous. Now, there have been reports that some concessions were made by Morey, and that I think they were down to, what was it, 2 first-round picks, a pick swap, and Terrence Mann plus filler, which is a reasonable deal. There's no reason for the Clippers to take it right now, but it is reasonable.
Yeah, and I think that it's even. I think it's just one pick, one swap, and Terrence Mann and salary filler. So I
Sure.
think. So I
Yeah.
think they
Get
feel
it done.
like.
Rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah, and I think they feel like Mann is technically that second first round pick, because I've read a couple places that Morey already has a deal waiting in the wings to flip
Yeah.
Mann for a first round pick. So
It wouldn't be overly surprising, even if you had to wait closer to the deadline, or even if you had to wait till the offseason, you're likely going to be able to flip Terrence Mann for a pick if he's not part of the long-term future. And if he is okay being part of the long-term future, he's on an affordable contract. So granted, it might interfere with that near 2 max slots that you're looking at headed into free agency next year, but who's to say you actually need all that? Because you need players to agree to come to Philadelphia, not just be able to fit within the salary requirements. So there's a lot to see over time how this is going to work, but this is going to be real slow moving for a while. This is not anywhere close to being over. The Clippers are not no longer interested in Harden. This is just posturing. This is another negotiation tactic,
exactly.
which we've seen from Philadelphia as well. Like there's it's the sickening dance that it doesn't usually take this long. It's not usually this annoying. It just so happens to be because James Harden only wants to go to one place. There's no market for James Harden. And the Sixers are rightfully stubborn. And the Clippers are rightfully stubborn too, because again, there's no reason they should bid against themselves. If they're the only team offering, who's to say that a pick swap, and salary filler doesn't beat any other deal? Because there's no other deals out there. And a big part of the reason there's no other deals out there is because of James Harden. So how this situation is going to resolve itself, I don't know. Let's take a look. Maybe if Harden starts playing, if things change, see how the Clippers look to start the season. Maybe their tune changes as well.
Yeah,
Maybe Harden just gets fed up of being in Philadelphia and says, all right, you can send me to, New York or back to
that's what I'm
Brooklyn
saying.
or whatever the hell.
That's what he needs to do. He needs to say the rumors need to
Don't
get
even
out there.
believe it. Just say it. Who gives a
Yeah,
crap? Just say it. Let them
yeah,
build the market and then just move on to LA.
yeah. Literally, that's all you got to do. Is he needs to be like, yeah, I'm okay with going to these 3 teams or these 4 teams on my short list. And even if his agent throws it out there, whatever,
Yeah.
boom, now you have a little bit of a market where you can be competitive and go from there. That's
Yeah.
literally what you have to do. And
Like, just say Chicago, Miami, Lakers. Like, just do that. And even though the Lakers, a deal wouldn't be able to happen until midseason, like just work off of that, and that will drastically change the trade landscape. So
mhm,
if James Harden, and I'm getting annoyed because I'm dealing with the Phillies loss, because I'm dealing with the fact that we're gonna now move right into Sixers season, and we're continuing with this drama and the Joel Embiid trade nonsense that we're not even going to talk about on this podcast. But with all of this stuff, all James Harden has to do is play. He has to open up that trade book just a little bit. He doesn't even have to mean it, because contrary to how he feels about Morey and quote unquote Morey being a liar, Morey is going to take the best deal that's available. The best deal that is available will likely come from the Clippers, because other teams are still going to be sheepish about whether or not Harden will play for them. but you just have to work with each other a little bit. Not even directly. Keep working through mutual channels as they have been, but you got to work with each other a little bit. And so far, Harden's been unwilling to do so. Morey's been unable to do so, and they're really both to blame for this point in the process that we're at. But there's just not an easy answer to this that doesn't involve the two of them working together again, which is the one thing that apparently will never happen. So this is just going to be a source of frustration for the Sixers, for Harden, for the Clippers, for Sixers fans from here until the day that it's not. That's it. I wish I had a better answer for you. That's effectively where we're at. I mean, do you have any inkling on when you'd expect to see this done?
Honestly, I feel like I'm feeling because somebody always says like December 15th when contracts can be traded. I think this is going to go
It's
towards,
always BS. Every year
yeah.
it's BS.
I'm thinking trade deadline. Um, Trade deadline is most likely, but then I feel like if either team has a pitfall early, which like a batch of early losses, and I'm not talking about if one of them starts 0-3 or something like that, but you know what I mean. Like somebody really is in the dog, like in the hole for some wins by like mid-November. Uh, mid-November, going into December, then I can see something happening. But we'll see. I mean, also it could be based on what other teams do. Other teams are bad first, then it might be something where the Sixers say, "Listen, we can get XYZ from XYZ, and we need to complete this. Let's do a 3-team deal." And maybe at that point, if they're already tanking or already feel like they can't win, then maybe they decide to just do a trade with the assets the Sixers are getting, and maybe man doesn't need to be involved. So, like, I think the landscape of the NBA makes it interesting too. So that's kind of what I see
Yeah,
happening.
I think you're 100% right. And one team to continually watch is Chicago. We've heard all the rumors coming out. We've heard the potential unsecure future of DeMar DeRozan and much more frequently Zach LaVine. And is there potential for a three-way trade to work out? We'll see. If Chicago is, if they're comfortable with the idea of acquiring Harden and Harden's comfortable with the idea of going to Chicago, obviously that drastically changes the landscape. Do the Sixers want Zach LaVine? I don't know that they do. Obviously, he's a very talented player, but I do think that in their ideal situation, they're recouping draft compensation to potentially make a trade this offseason as opposed to bringing in a very good but not great player who has noticeable weaknesses and is on a very large contract. He would certainly improve the Sixers team, but how high does he make the ceiling? It's more of a floor raising move. Uh, but even still, they do remain a potential suitor. The idea of adding DeMar DeRozan is uh, he's like the worst fit, but he is still he he still might be preferable because he can handle the ball a bit. Would be nice to have someone who can work the mid range. He's not much of a defender. He does not space the floor, but maybe you could find a Jimmy Butler right role for him in there somewhere, at least offensively speaking. It's gonna take it's going to take a lot of rumors. It's going to take a lot of people spreading out false information out there until we finally hear. And when I say false, I don't mean like they're just making stuff up. Like I'm talking sourced information that's trying to influence others. Like at a certain point, source information possibly coming from Philadelphia that there are more suitors for James Harden all of a sudden, or whatever the case may be. But we're going to be playing this dance, or rather, dancing this dance for quite some time. Hopefully mid-November is when they figure it out. Could it be December? Possibly. I don't think it has to do with the free agency deadline or rather trade what's the right way to phrase that? The trade restriction being lifted for free agents in the past offseason. I don't think it'll necessarily deal with that date in particular, but you never know. It could free up just a couple more low end guys that could then be culminated into a deal to make it work. But the point of it all is that we do not appear close to the light at the end of the tunnel. And that is very frustrating. So instead, my recommendation is that you focus on the controllable, and the controllable for Philadelphia right now is this game in Milwaukee. It's what this lineup with Anthony Melton in it can do, and it's what we can get out of the bench unit from there. So what this entire unit will look like under Nick Nurse, both offensively and defensively, what the reigning MVP is going to look like in his return after that MVP season. Is he still out there trying to prove himself every night that he's there? Is there a little bit of satisfaction knowing the job that he did last year? Who knows? We'll find out. He said all the right stuff so far, but he's going to have a chance to prove it this season. So either way, we'll be watching along, of course. Listen, we're trying to make it just like you guys. We cover the team. We do love the team. It's not easy for us either. So just know that you're not alone. Justin, any other last thoughts before we close about what you're looking forward to? Let's go for the full season.
I'm just looking forward to, like,
you can't say the James Harden trade being over, because that's
no. I'm just looking
that's
forward
everybody
to just hopefully watching a different style of basketball than we've seen in the last couple of years, different style of coaching, and honestly, Sixers flying under the radar and randomly ending the year with 54 wins and nobody thought it would happen. That's kind of what I'm looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, no, I think that there is a way that they can. I don't want to say fake until they make it, but that they can rally effectively, because I don't think it'd be faking it. I think that if they do, I think that if they do rally together and they do kind of figure this out, and they are going to be a top, let's say, 4 team in the Eastern Conference, I think it will be legitimate. I don't think it's going to be by accident. I don't think it's going to be by not resting their players as much as other teams, although that's been a hot button topic around the league. I think that it's really going to be a matter of how much these players are willing to buy into Nick Nurse's system, and how much they're willing to buy into each other as a team. So it will be interesting. It will be fun. It will be maddening. It will be frustrating, infuriating. It's going to be the whole spectrum, man. I don't know what else to tell you guys, but it's going to be a crazy ride. Hopefully you will be along there with us the entire way. And again, look out for Philly Sports Network's show tomorrow, pre-gaming day. Come out and join us. Talk a little Sixers. Like I said, talk about the good vibes, the not so good vibes, and anything and everything that you're feeling about this upcoming season. But for now, I've been Zach Chavalella here with my co-host Justin Crosby. And remember, just like you guys, we're still processing.